Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services here this afternoon, we would kindly ask if everyone would please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Shalom, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm Rabbi Gary Gans from Congregation Beth Tikva in Marlton. And I remember Mikhail from being the grandparent schlepper who would constantly bring our bar mitzvah boy in training and our Hebrew school student extraordinaire, as Arthur was so diligent in coming to our Hebrew school. And I don't mean that facetiously. He really was interested. And to promote that interest, Mikhail was the driver in and out, day in and day out. And I had the opportunity to meet with him, to schmooze with him, as he so happily brought Arthur to his studies. I also remember his joy when Arthur became a bar mitzvah, quite a number of years ago now. But I'm glad to see you're still reddish in hair. And I'm honored but sad to meet with you all again today. Ma'ayan HaChayim, wellspring of life. We come together today sharing our sorrow, but also the joys of Mikhail's life, to commemorate that life and to recall the blessing of his life. We thank God for all that was good and true in his life and for the precious memories which shall endure. Eternal God, his family and friends, bowed in grief, seek light to dispel the dark gloom that threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to those who mourn, for they are in distress. Bless them, O God, with your compassion. Ease their burden of sorrow, and send them light and peace. As it is written, fear not, as I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will sustain you with my power. And let us say, Amen. Just before this public sermon, we had a private moment here in the front. And I cut the ribbons as a symbol of loss for Irene. And her ribbon is on the left-hand side, as tradition has it for the loss of a parent. And we also had the ribbons cut for Dina and Arthur. Even though tradition only requires it for the first level of relationship, we've included them as well. And they're wearing the ribbons on the right-hand side, as is also expected. But when you get close to them later, you will see that the ribbons are only cut part way. At the very top, the closest to the heart, in fact, the ribbons are intact. The ribbons represent the sense of tearing, the sense of loss, but intact are the memories that are heartfelt. These ribbons are worn as a symbol to themselves and to others who see them of the nature of their loss. And because of the holiday of Passover that is only a few days away, they will only be wearing the ribbons until the morning of the first Seder. Because the holiday, even in their sad moments, is so joyful that mourning is brought to an end. So yes, I officiated at Arthur's bar mitzvah. We both were a lot younger, as were some of you who were there that day. Yet those are the kinds of memories that we shared with Mikhail and with his wife, Gita. She's not here physically today. But I so enjoyed hearing the story that he would bring her chocolate for every one of his visits. Whether she identified him or not, he shared the sweetness of life, of love. And I find that very touching. Also poignant, I see on top of his coffin is his Soviet officer's cap. He served in the Soviet Navy, reaching the ranks of lieutenant colonel, and was commander. I'll tell you more about that piece in a few minutes. But he also served, unfortunately, way back in 1933. For being a Zionist, he was placed in jail. No? His father, sorry. Okay. But he maintained that love and tradition as a Zionist. At the age of 34, graduated the State University of Latvia. Then worked for the Ministry of Health and developed hospitals on behalf of the people. He arrived here in the U.S. in 1993, reuniting with his family who was already here. We acknowledge Irene and her strength to reunite the family, to continue to support her family and her parents, supported, of course, with Zachary. I also acknowledge Dina's husband, Roy, and my little boy, Arthur's wife, Ava. But I also reach out to his next generation, Mikhail's next generation, his great-grandchildren, Daphne, Lucy, Sivan, Rachel, and Romy, Eden. And I was touched again when you told me that he would say, when I see your girls, it makes me want to live. And indeed, he lived. He was a multifaceted individual with lots of interests, lots of talent. I never knew, because he never told me when I would see him in the lobby of the synagogue, that he also was an author. He produced books. One of them was just published a few days ago. You sent me the foreword of his book written by his editor-in-chief, Irina Tchaikovskaya. I'm going to share some of her words with you as well. I learned the name of Mikhail Margolin in 2017 when I came across a collection of essays and memoirs he had written in memory of the writer Felix Rosner, explaining everyday concepts of the times of socialism, incomprehensible to our contemporaries. He was born in 1930. He took full advantage of his life under Soviet rule. A few years later, Mikhail sent his first article to the Chaika magazine, which I am editing. This is the editor speaking. And since then, his articles began to appear here regularly. And that's amazing. Having passed a harsh and dangerous path of a naval officer of the Baltic Fleet, after the war, he commanded a minesweeper that neutralized German mines. Mikhail did not stop exclusively on naval topics. In his essays, he touched on a lot of other topics, from criticism of American democracy to the fate of Russian Jewry and the education of young people. She continues, once I received a present from him, a book about his mother, published in tiny print run. And there was so much warmth and love in her. So tragically was the fate of a Jewish woman whose husband was fighting at the front, and she and her 4 small children were going through the circles of evacuation hell, through the hunger and cold of 2 Asian republics that she could not help touching on the way to evacuation. Mikhail, the eldest of 4 children, happened to witness a terrible scene. A nearby freight car was carrying Chechens and Ingushes into exile, indiscriminately accused by the Stalinist authorities of betrayal. In front of the teenagers' eyes, an armed guard shot and killed an elderly gray-bearded Chechen just because he wanted to get water for his own sick granddaughter. Such impressions are not forgotten. Today, Mikhail Margolin is over 90, but his creative energy is not scarce. Every week, I continue receiving another article from him. I wish his new book success and recommend it to the readers. Such intellectual strength, holding on to the memories of what his life was, culturally different, and such hard memories that he holds on to. On his behalf, I offer Psalm 23, a portion in Hebrew and an English interpretation. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, benodeshe yarbitzeni, al mei menuchot yanachaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, yancheni b'ma'aglei tzedek lema'an shemo, gam ki elech begates al mavet, lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha o mish antecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shucha neged zorai. Tishanta b'Hashem roshi. Kosi revaya. Akto v'chesed yirdafuni. Kol yemei chayai. V'shavti v'beit Adonai li'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set the table in sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. Before we came together, I observed you. And I saw the strength of family and friendship that bound you together. I heard words of joy and a sense of sadness. That wide spectrum of emotion is what you are feeling here today. For what was, for the sadness over the continuation that will not exist, but holding on to those memories that you do have. And that is represented for me in the book of Ecclesiastes, that states, for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Indeed, it is a time to speak and to share feelings. I'm honored to call first on Irene.
was a very tough 3 weeks. And I spent basically every day in the hospital with my father. It was ups and downs, different news, hopeful and not hopeful, and endless conversations with doctors, nurses, staff, supporting groups. And basically, it was a conversation about, it's very sad, he was 93 years old, the trauma was very severe, and you have to consider that it's very not hopeful outcome. They asked me about different points of the care, and on my side, I was telling them, I understand he's 93 years old and trauma is severe, but I want to tell you what I know. He is 93 years old, probably younger than many 63 years old. He is a healthy man who took care of himself very well. And the most important thing, he is really, really love life. He wanted to live. It was a very difficult obstacles because it was back and forth, and he was really strong man. He was a fighter. It was a period of after first surgery, he was giving us a lot of hope. And but then everything went not how we expected. I was talking to that staff all the time and giving my sort of arguments. And as I was talking to them, I presenting them with a different sort of experience, memories, what I have about him, as a point of my proof how unusual and how determined and strong man he is. And then I realized that it's interesting. We live with our parents, and now they're next to us all our life. We know about different events of their life, different past moments, but we never picture their lives from kind of in a whole strength and the whole line. So, and then I realized that, oh my God, the life is so extraordinary. And it basically is not a one life, it's a many lives in one. And then I was starting remembering extraordinary moments. And for me, living in a totally different time frame, I can't imagine what he went through. And I just want to share some of them, because they were so incredible. He became grown-up man, in my view, at the age of 11 when the war started. They flee the town, and on the way to the different destination, it was cold. They were in a wagon, in a train. His mother and 4 siblings, and the youngest was 5 years old, and he is basically dying from hunger, and he was sick. And one stop of this train, my father saw the pile of watermelons, and he realized that there's maybe some hope to get the watermelon is safe, his brother and whole family. So he ran to this pile, grabbed the watermelon, and then he realized that the train started moving. The way how he did, how he was pretty good storyteller, he hold this watermelon like it was a source and last hope for life, and ran to this train. And miracle happened, people helped him, and he jumped to the last begging. But the worst part, he was a person of great empathy. He realized that he cannot get to his mother to the next step. And it was a couple of hours probably. And he was in horror, realizing what his mother, knowing that his youngest was dying and the oldest one is basically lost. At the age of 14, he found they could come back to the town because it was liberated. And at the age of 13, they lived in Kursk in Russia. And it was a difficult time. It was hunger. It was nothing to eat. It was, everybody knows what the war can bring. And he saw the article in a magazine. It was basically an advertisement for boarding school of the Navy Academy. And he realized that his family probably not survive because father on the battlefield, mother has 4 kids and nothing to eat. So he realized that if he goes to this boarding school, he's going to be on a full board, and he probably survive with less mouths to feed. So he asked mother to write permission to write a letter to his father. If he is okay, he goes to the school. His father gave him his blessing, and this is at the age of 15, he left town, and he went to Baku. For the people who don't know what it is, it's like go to New York to California. It's a totally different part of the world, of the country. It's a different, not even, it was part of the Soviet Union, but it was different republic with a total different culture. Total different culture, I'm sorry. The whole town came to say goodbye to him, but he was a teenager. And his mother was very sad that he is leaving, so she wanted to give him a hug. But a kiss, my daughter helped me, hug and a kiss, but oh my God, the teenager is going to show everyone. It was all the time the same. Teenagers are teenagers. Give a kiss in front of their bodies? No. So he kind of pushed her away. When he come next time, from the boarding school, he had a vacation, the break, I would call it. His mother was dead. So all his life, he had this guilt, never left him, that he is such a stupid kid, didn't let his mother to give him a hug and a kiss. Rabbi Gans already mentioned that he was a Navy officer, and he was cleaning mines of the Baltic Sea. And actually, he earned the medal for that, and it was a very difficult time for him. Then, after that, he was having his duty. He worked as a commander in Riga in the Baltic fleet, I call it. Terminology is not good, very good for me. But it was routine life. He goes to work, he comes home. My mother told him, I said, what kind of boring life we have right now? So you have to do something. I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, well, maybe you can go to school. I said, to school? And he was challenged. when she challenged him with the school, he actually applied to university. And he graduated Latvian University, like our rabbi mentioned, and he was a major in economic and law. At age of 45, he retired from Navy, and he became a, actually it was open a new department. It's new director of the capital improvement of health ministry of Latvia. Again, for the people who don't know structure, it is a big shot position, and he reconstructed everything. He did a lot of improvement. He earned respect. He had a personal car, and he had, because of his position, because he knew so many people, he had the connections. And I have to tell you, he uses all these connections to help people. I come to his office, and it was a big, big journal, sort of like calendar, and this calendar was full of notes, who he had to call, who asked him for help, and he was very busy. He never, ever told no to anyone if he can help. And the people still calling me and telling me they remember the goodness he did for different people. He was a very interesting man. When we got planning to have a wedding, my mother-in-law my future mother-in-law came over with his sister. Unfortunately, Zachary's father passed by that time. My mother was there. I was there. We actually didn't care if we have a wedding or not having a wedding. It was totally not important for us. And everybody had the arguments why they don't want to have a wedding. And he was very passionately discussing with everybody and listen every argument. And after this conversation, the evening finished, he said, I think we all come to the same conclusion. The wedding is going to be happened. I have only one daughter, and I'm going to organize everything. And he did. He did everything by himself. And it was gorgeous, a very fun wedding. Then we immigrated in here. The first couple of years he helped with Arthur. He was really, it was very interesting time. Arthur was sharing with him different stories, tell him about his homework, and all this was in order, everything. When I come to pick him up, his shoes was in the right place, his books was in the right place, and when he was playing with something, and I have to pick him up, he put everything in the right spots. And the same person, the same Arthur comes home, and the shoes was on one side, and the books were on another side, and the book back on the third side, and he managed to kind of organize him. When I was in high school, I come back a little bit. When I was in high school, he took me to Moscow. He wanted me to kind of introduce to cultural side of the capital. And he booked, I have the people from Moscow in here, he booked a very fancy, at that point, a Hotel Ukraine. We had very nice room and ate always this fancy breakfast in there. And he didn't book one single event. We just came, we had the hotel. And I watched him. He was very charming. Women love him. I watched him, he goes downstairs to the, whatever the ticket place, and said, well, you know what, I come with my daughter for 4 days, and I needed to see Большой Таганка, Современник, and Кремлевский дворец. And yeah, and they said, well, for 4 days, everything sold out. Well, but I needed just 2 tickets. And magic happened. He got Большой, Борис Годунов. We had ballet in Кремлевский дворец. We had like Таганка and Современник. So he was very fashionable man. He loved clothes, hated to be not together, noticed all things, and always told me, by the way, it's very interesting things that if your woman friend tell you that this dress is good, trash it. Since that, I remember that, and every my friend asked me, God, I give them an honest answer. I can talk. He was the one thing I want to absolutely mention. He was a religious man. He never observed. He was not even educated. He didn't know a lot of things. However, he told me a story. He was probably 30 years old, probably younger. He vacationed with his father, who spoke Hebrew and know all traditions, all holidays, was a really observant man. They happened to be in Georgia, in Kutaisi. They went to synagogue. And his father, he was shocked, went to the bima and started to lead the service. He said, I never cry ever like that. It was absolutely amazing event. So not being a religious man, not being observant man, he was very religious. And the fact that he had a bar mitzvah and the fact that he saw his grandson saying Kaddish, morning Kaddish, when my grandmother died, he told me it was probably the happiest day for me because I know that my father was very honored and very happy too. And a few things. In the hospital, when the people when I talked to nurses, like I mentioned before, and they listen small stories, and when they listened, one of the nurses, when she heard that he goes to my mother and brings chocolate, she was crying. And another nurse told me when I was kind of commenting on something, I said, don't worry about anything. It's honor to treat him. And it was incredible that people who basically never even talked to him realized that he is a really special man. Finally, I just want to say I am blessed and honored to be his daughter.
I now welcome Dina and Arthur to come to the pulpit together.
My grandfather, as you heard, was an incredible man with an incredible life. But to me, he was simply my grandpa, Ded Misha. And we were buddies from the beginning. From the time I could remember anything to the very last moment, we were buddies. We were friends. And so you heard all about his life, but I want to share some of my memories with him, just my personal memories with him. When I was little, he used to take me to the park almost every day. My grandma Gita would feed me some soup like a proper Jewish grandmother. And then we went to the park, and we went for a long time, like an hour and a half. We would pack bread to feed the ducks, and we would talk and feed ducks. And then I was very afraid of the dentist, because those of you who grew up in the Soviet Union know that that was basically a torture. And so we used to play dentist. He was like, let's play dentist. I'll be the patient. He was always the patient. And I would tell him, don't worry, it's not going to hurt too much. And I used sticks as a drill. and we would walk. I have this memory. We walking down in the park. He's walking ahead. I don't know why he was walking ahead, and I'm walking behind. And I'm saying, Dad, do you love me? And he's like, of course. Do you love me? Of course. Like this was how we, this is how we interacted. He was an amazing storyteller. The way he told stories, I think, was magical. And even though my kids don't speak any Russian, he still managed to pass the stories along. Daphne, my oldest, started riding horses. And when he heard that, he said, I have a story for you. Horses are really amazing animals, and I'm going to tell you why. When I was a little boy and we were in evacuation from the war, there was a police officer on a horse who wanted to chase me. He was, trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, but he was chasing him. And he was trying to get this horse to help him, and the horse wouldn't help. The horse was just fighting this whole thing, like pushing back. And he said, I remember from that day, horses are warm, magical animals, and he was so touched that Daphne loved riding horses. And the reason I say this the way the stories get passed, when he got sick and he was in the hospital, and I told Daphne, she said, don't worry, he's gonna be okay. He's a strong man. He ran away from a Nazi on a horse. She remembers this story. He always told me that doing nice things gives him the most joy in life, that's what life is about, is doing nice things for other people. And he did. That's what he did. You heard the story about the chocolates, but as with my grandfather, he's always arranging. He would call me, and it was specific. The chocolate I buy from Trader Joe's is too big. She needs individual-sized chocolates. Find them for me. So I searched, and I found this box from Amazon. And so he would have individual size, exactly the right size that he could feed her. And when he would run low, he would call me, I need another Amazon order. Just these little things. He constantly called me, asking what gifts he could buy my kids. Like, no reason, no birthdays, nothing. Just, do they need anything? Maybe like a new bed? Like, just random stuff. Chocolate, candy, like, all the time. And even recently, my husband sent him a shirt in the mail as a present. Like, just a random shirt. He called me probably 5 times and said, what can I get Roy as a thank you? What can I buy him? And I'm like, he doesn't need anything. It's a shirt. It's nothing. And he's like, but I can't. I have to thank him. It's just so thoughtful that he did that. This is the kind of person he was. He used to visit his mother-in-law, my grandmother's mother, every day in the hospital. Every day. In the nursing home. And they weren't particularly warm, or it's not like they had some amazing relationship, but he felt this is what you do. You visit a person. And when he came to pick me up sometimes from school, let's go to Ida. Let's go visit Ida. We always went together to visit her. It was every day he went to visit her, just to sit with her. This is the kind of things that he always did things for people. What also impressed me was he never stopped learning and wanting to live a purposeful life. Not just living, but living a purposeful life. You heard he became a writer at the age of 70, which I think is incredible. But sometimes he'll call me and say, my computer is broken, help me. Why didn't he call Arthur, the software engineer? I don't know, but he called me. But he never said, fix it for me or do it for me. He would say, show me how to do it so that I could do it myself next time. He always wanted to learn. And I just think that sort of, that purpose, and even if everybody I think knows he took up photography when he was younger. And I think that that's incredible. I mean, he was a Navy officer. He had all these jobs, responsibilities, and he decided, I want to do photography. And he didn't just do photography. He built a dark room in his Soviet little apartment that was basically a closet. He convinced my grandmother to turn this closet into a dark room, and he would develop the photographs himself. And I was his muse. We spent hours doing photos with proper lighting, and no, I had to sit like this, and when you sit, you have to think of something important or think of something happy. I mean, he was so particular. One photograph could take 40 minutes to take the proper way. But I guess I enjoyed it, so he and I, this is forever, just hours of photography together. And when you come to our house today, you will see all his photographs. They're incredible. And this is on top of his regular stuff. He just took this up, but he took it up all the way. You know, he went for it. He loved passionately, very passionately, and with a full heart. My daughters were his everything. You already heard, but I'll repeat it. He always told me, when I see your girls on Skype, it makes me want to live. It makes me want to live longer. And my cousin from Israel, so his sister's granddaughter, she told me that she always thought of him as an example. He's our example, that's what she calls him. I think the way he lived, it should be example to all of us. This is how I think people should live. I learned a new Russian phrase this week from my dad. He said there's a phrase, "ушел из жизни." I'm having trouble translating it to English, but basically it's when a person just leaves life abruptly. They're not dying, they don't take a long time. They were living and then they're gone. And, you know, he died the way that he lived. Like, he was living and then he left. And for me, that gives me incredible peace and comfort that he lived life the way he wanted to. And then he left, but he left it that way. And the last thing I'll say is, my husband always gets annoyed with me when I'm always taking pictures of all the kids. He's always like, you're missing it. You're missing the moment. You're taking pictures instead of just living the moment. Just look at the situation. It'll be in your heart later. You'll remember it. You don't need a photo of everything. And now I'm realizing all these memories are in my mind, in my head, in my heart, and they'll be with me forever. So he'll be with us forever.
That's good. That was good. That was tough to follow. We didn't coordinate our speeches, and there just is so much overlap. It's incredible. My grandfather, Dziet, he lived this just kind of enormous life. Like, he was physically, emotionally, mentally, like an enormous guy, like in every way. But interestingly, I wasn't there for most of that life. I came along much later, and I can tell you stories, but not as well as so many people here can. So I just want to talk about the things that I remember. I remember very clearly the first time we met. Obviously, it wasn't really the first time we met because we met in the Soviet Union when I was a baby, but I remember the day that he came to America. And we lived in this small 2-bedroom apartment in Cherry Hill. And we had this green armchair that sat in the corner, right? I remember the color. And I remember him sitting there and just like jumping on him. And this man who I didn't know, like I didn't really know him at all, but I was just so happy and excited for him to be there with us and to have my grandfather there. I don't know if like the memories were deeply set in my mind, but that's just how I felt. And from then on, we became great friends. He would pick me up every day from school, as you've heard now a couple of times. He drove me everywhere. He was my chauffeur and my babysitter. As I got older, I wanted to sit in the front. My grandfather always, for the most part, followed all the rules. And he was like, дети сидят сзади, children belong in the back. And which is correct, But as I got older, I would ask him, like, Dед, я хочу сесть вперед. I want to sit in the front. I'd say, нет, нет, you belong in the back. One day I got smart. I said to him, ну, дед, я здесь сижу, я смотрю на твой затылок, но я хочу смотреть на твое красивое лицо. Of course. I said, Dad, I'm sitting here staring at the back of your head, but I want to look at your handsome face. From then on, I sat in the front. The man loved to be loved, and I think I got that gene from him. We would get to his apartment. Everything, as my mom explained, was very regimented. I didn't know it back then, but I was in military school. First, shoes off. And my grandfather had a place for everything. Place didn't always make sense, but there was a place. I inherited this as well, as my wife would tell you. The shoes didn't go on a shoe rack or in the coat closet on the floor. No, they went in a kitchen cabinet, in the base cabinet on the second shelf. His shoes and my grandmother's shoes went on the first shelf. Mine went on the second shelf. Don't ask me why I was in the kitchen cabinet, but that's where it went. And you better believe my shoes were always there every single day. Then it was homework time. Always do your work. But hard work was not without reward in my grandfather's house. At 3 o'clock, always Power Rangers. I loved the Power Rangers. And no matter what, he always let me watch my show. Then it was lunchtime. Certainly I had lunch at school, but in a Russian Jewish house, there was always second lunch. I would sit down. He would warm something up that my grandmother had cooked. And then afterwards, it was nap time. Every day it was the same thing. They had a couch in their bedroom. I don't know why they had a couch in their bedroom, but they did. And he would make the bed. The bed didn't stay that way. It was clean every day when I got there. And he would put a sheet on the couch, and he would tell me to get in. He would tuck me in. And every day it was the same. Ну, дед, я не хочу спать. I don't want to sleep. He said, ничего, ничего, положи, закрой глазки, close your eyes. I always fell asleep. When I was telling this to my wife, she said, you still do this. So you lay down on the couch, it's like, I'm not tired, and then you fall right asleep. So, guess some things stick. After nap time, it was study time, and he always helped me get ready for school, study for tests. I would have flashcards with the times tables and vocabulary, and he would do the flashcards with me. What is magnificent? And I would say, ну что-то такое прекрасное. I would explain to him. He turned over the flash and says, yes, very good. I think he was learning English that way along with me. Then my grandmother would come home, and I would have dinner. There was always a separate thing to eat for dinner. There was never the same food that I had for lunch. She had always prepared something else. So there's always 2 sets of food for me. My grandfather, God bless him, he loved to eat, but he didn't cook. He never cooked. My grandmother cooked. But every time I cooked for him, he was just always so thrilled. I guess I got this from my grandmother's side, and he would just be в восторге. He would always just be so amazed at whatever I was making. And he told me once that his father was a good cook, that he loved to prepare food. And I guess that gene kind of skipped the mail one generation. And then we would just hang out. My grandmother would ask me what was going on in school, what's going on in your life, why am I not getting 100 on every test, And we would just wait for my mom. By that point, I was kind of knew when my mom would come home or come to pick me up, and I was excited to go home. And then we would go. And we did that basically every weekday for 10 years. Eventually, I grew up. I didn't need him to take care of me anymore. I would just take the bus home from school and hang out by myself, feed myself. My sister, though, reminded me of a couple of things. As everyone knows, he wrote many articles. As he got older, he switched from the typewriter to the computer. I remember teaching him how to use the computer. And it was just like astounding to me that I was able to teach this 70, 80-some-year-old man things that were obviously simple for me, but things that I recognize are complex tasks for people of a generation above me, let alone 2 generations above me. And I would like sit with him very diligently, like you click this button and then you do this and you use this menu. And he would just like, it was clear that he was memorizing the exact steps that he needed to do for the things that he needed to do. And that's like the kind of person he was. He didn't want anybody to take care of him. He didn't need anything from anyone unless he really needed something from you. And if you didn't help, he would help you remember. But he always wanted to be self-sustaining, and he did. He learned. He probably knew how to use the computer better than my parents know how to use the computer, you know, with all respect. He was, my sister also reminded me, an incredible photographer, and I remember when I took photography in college, I took it for 1 semester. I just totally fell in love with it. Full film, also in the darkroom. And I remember showing him my work. And he gave me his camera, his original film camera that he shot so many of the photos that you'll see on. And that was my camera for photo class. It was a sweet, sweet old camera, but like a nice one. He didn't have anything that was, you know, junk. What? No, it was a Pentax. It's a Pentax ME Super, if anyone was curious. That was the exact camera. And I used to show him my work. I was so proud to like show him these photographs I was taking, especially the ones that like I knew like these were the good ones. And he would give me critiques and he would be impressed with certain things. And I gave him some photographs that we found yesterday in his house, in his apartment, sitting there. Anyways, I was thinking about all this. It was incredible, as my mom pointed out, how regimented I was with him. Because the rest of my life is just like chaotic order, right? I mean, there's a system for everything, but it's my system. Nobody else can understand it. And these days, I find myself trying to find more of that structure and that regimentedness. And I'll be thinking about him all the time and using him for inspiration. He was, as Masha said, an example. Dad, I love you.
Now I invite Maxime to join with us. Maxime is visiting from Germany and is going to be speaking in Russian.
Мы пришли сегодня проститься с моим дядей, с дядей Мишей. Я хочу рассказать немножко те истории, которые он мне рассказывал о себе. Первое воспоминание детства его было, когда ему было 3 года, и он ехал на подводе со своей матерью, с моей бабушкой, в районное отделение ГПУ в Беларуси навещать деда, который там сидел. Его посадили за то, что он был участником совершенно невинного сионистского объединения в 1933 году в Беларуси. К счастью, времена тогда были еще беззубые. Деда выпустили через несколько месяцев, и они спешно уехали в Курск, справедливо опасаясь, что в Беларуси их семья уже будет взята на заметку. Второе воспоминание было связано с 1939 годом, когда, как известно, наша советская родина вернула себе братские западно-белорусские, западно-украинские народы. И наша семья, моя бабушка, вернула себе свою сестру, дядю Мишину тетку, которая жила в Барановичах, на тогдашней польской территории. И бабушка отправилась туда, взяв с собой старших сыновей, чтобы повидаться с сестрой, которую она не видела почти 20 лет. И дядя рассказывал, что на перроне они обнялись, и тетка с истошно кричала «Es lebt Genosse Сталин» от счастья, что она увидела свою сестру. Через 2 года она вместе с 67 остальными нашими родственниками, разбросанными по всей Белоруссии, оказалась в расстрельных рвах и ямах. Но дед увез детей, жену посадил в последний поезд из Курска, и они спаслись, а сам отправился в народное ополчение. Моя тетка, которой уже нет, старшая из детей, она 27-го года рождения была, до конца своих дней боялась шума пролетающих самолетов над головой. В эвакуации они чуть не умерли от голода, как и многие тысячи и миллионы советских людей, но им повезло чуть больше, потому что бабушка истово работала, чтобы они остались живы. И кроме того, дядя Миша тоже работал. В 12-летнем возрасте он был назначен водителем кобылы и на лошади возил телегу с бочкой воды на мясокомбинат. И на том же мясокомбинате, по счастью, работал какой-то эвакуированный, тоже русский мужик, какой-то дядька, земляк из Курска. Ну и просто он увидел, что бьется одна женщина с 4 детьми, полуголодными, полуживыми, и иногда выносил в кармане украденный кусочек коровьих кишок. Это варили и ели. Как Ира сказала, в 1945 году дядька отправился в Нахимовское подготовительное училище военно-морского флота СССР для детей-сирот и детей военнослужащих. Он не был романтиком моря. До этого я знаю, что он море вообще никогда не видел, но там было все на государственном обеспечении. Давали еду и одежду. Он уезжал, Ира уже рассказывала, но он уезжал в калошах на босу ногу, штаны его были подвязаны веревочкой, и он не мог уйти на поезд, потому что он сдал старшую сестру. Она должна была прийти с работы и отдать ему жакет. Жакет был, правда, женскими выточками, вот, но другого не было. После подгота он поступил, тогда уже это был Калининград, бывший Кёнигсберг, Калининградское высшее военно-морское училище, и закончил его первым выпуском, после чего был распределен на дважды краснознаменный Балтийский флот. Он начал свою военную службу помощником командира тральщика, потом стал командиром тральщика. И в течение 5, по-моему, лет занимался тем, что чистил, тралил Ирбенский пролив, Рижский залив от мин, которые там были нафаршированы еще со времен Первой мировой войны. Колчаковские мины, адмирал Колчак был начальником минной дивизии, немецкие мины, советские мины. Он получил медаль за боевые заслуги. Он был хорошим офицером. Да простят меня здесь присутствующие дамы, на флоте есть такая пословица: службу нести – это не гениталиями трясти. Он хорошо нес службу. И свидетельством того стала отправка его документов в главный военно-морской штаб СССР для перевода, он был капитаном-лейтенантом, для перевода в оперативный отдел Балтийского флота на должность капитана 1-го ранга. Он должен был стать адмиралом, и он бы стал адмиралом. Просто это не требует доказательств. Но на беду наши кузены на Ближнем Востоке победили в шестидневной войне. И тогда министр обороны Советского Союза маршал Гречко издал секретный приказ, что офицеры еврейского происхождения не могут занимать должности в штабах объединений, соединений войск и флотов, а также командные должности выше, на уровне командира дивизии. Следовательно, карьера дяди Миши флотская, которая стремительно развивалась, он был очень хорошим офицером, она была оборвана. Но он закончил службу начальником гидрографической службы Рижской военно-морской базы. То есть он отвечал как бы за дорожное движение всех военных кораблей на Балтике. Он был в штормах. Он рассказывал, что он был 12 суток в шторме на Балтике подряд. Это значит, что на Балтике волны, море мелководное, волны очень короткие, злые. Это было очень тяжело. Он это видел. Он был в Атлантике на совместных глобальных учениях всех 3 флотов Советского Союза. И, закончив службу, буквально через несколько дней он стал работать в системе Министерства здравоохранения. Случайно. Там как-то его бывший сослуживец предложил ему место, но через несколько месяцев в системе капитального строительства и ремонта, потому что больничные учреждения, больницы, поликлиники требовали ремонта, новые строились, старые ремонтировались и так далее. Через несколько месяцев он предложил совершенно новую структуру в этой системе. И я не знаю почему, наверное, в силу 5-й графы, он был там только замом, а не начальником. То есть, по-американски говоря, он был зам генерального директора огромной государственной корпорации на уровне целого штата. Причем штата процветающего, потому что Советская Латвия в те годы была одной из самых процветающих республик в нашей бывшей стране. Еще в военное время, еще будучи офицером флота, он открыл себе литературные способности. Причем объяснял это следующим образом. Ты понимаешь, вот нету денег. Он, естественно, задавал все, так сказать, супруге. Вот. А тут какую-то заметочку напишешь во флотскую газету, небольшую, об очередных успехах веренного тебе корабля или что-то еще в этом роде, и 25 рублей, как сказать, которые оставались уже в полном его распоряжении. И вот с этой должности, которая открывала невиданные перспективы, Советский Союз уже разваливался, он уехал вслед за своей семьей, за дочерью, внуками, за семьей. Потому что главное для него всегда было это семья. Она включала в себя не только, конечно, Иру с мужем, детей, но и всех нас, сестру его, 2 братьев его и отпрысков. Он всегда помогал, чем мог нам, и его никогда до последних дней не надо было о чем-то просить дважды. Любая просьба, к которой ты к нему обращался, от какой-то мелкой до глобальной, выполнялась моментально. Или, если он не мог что-то сделать, он прямо тебе говорил: ты знаешь, я этого не могу сделать. Здесь, в Америке, у него развернулся его писательский, публицистический дар. И до последних дней он писал свои статьи на самые разные темы, во всевозможные русскоязычные издания. Сначала в Израиле, потом здесь в США, потом в издании, которое интернет-издание, которое базируется у нас там в Германии. Все его статьи были интересны. Он жил не только воспоминаниями, хотя тогда, когда он рассказывал о своей жизни, о случаях в своей жизни, это было особенно интересно, но и тем, что происходит сейчас. Он всегда держал руку на пульсе всего происходящего. Какие-то вещи я не понимал, ну, какие-то там, значит, споры в Jewish community и так далее. Ну, просто я вне этого находился. Но его интересовала жизнь. Его интересовали люди. В устах другого человека это бы прозвучало напыщенно или как-то немножко даже странно. Но когда он говорил: ты знаешь, мы с ним так беседовали по скайпу, ты знаешь, я очень люблю людей. Это не звучало ни напыщенно, ни как-то фальшиво. Он действительно любил людей, они были ему интересны, самые разные. И он оставался живым человеком до самого конца. В моей жизни, в жизни моих сыновей, к которым он очень тоже трепетно относился, осталась, выражаясь, знаете, морским языком, огромная пробоина, под которой, наверное, невозможно подвести никакой пластырь. Очень жалко, что дяди Миши больше с нами нет. Очень жалко. Я благодарю вас за то, что вы пришли сюда, тем самым проявив уважение к нему и ко всей нашей семье.
Zachary's going to share some phrasing, some verbs as well.
Я не планировал сегодня ничего говорить, но все-таки хочу. Тут столько было сказано про Мишу, что вроде бы добавить уже нечего. Но я хочу с вами еще поделиться двумя очень короткими историями, которые замыкаются на мою семью и на меня. Значит, когда много лет назад мы собрались уезжать из Союза и говорили об этом с Ирой, она мне говорила: ну как я могу ему об этом сказать, ну как я ему скажу? Он в прошлом военный, его никогда не выпустят. Значит, мы уезжаем навсегда, ты увозишь его единственную дочку, ты увозишь его внуков. Я не могу ему этого сказать. Я сказал: ну придется мне, видимо. И когда я только начал с ним говорить об этом, реакция была совершенно неожиданная. Он мне сказал: а какого черта вы здесь сидите? Почему ты со мной говоришь об этом сейчас, а не 5 лет назад? Вас уже давно здесь должно было не быть. Езжайте, конечно, абсолютно. И дальше это было не просто разрешение «езжайте», это было полнейшее стопроцентное участие, помощь на том высочайшем уровне, которую он мог нам оказать. Он, ну, в общем, он помог нам уехать по полной программе. И вот я это помню, я этого никогда не забуду. А вторая история произошла здесь, лет, наверное, 15 назад. Значит, мы с Ирой задумали замечательное мероприятие – поехать в круиз с семьей. Ира, я, Дина, Артур, Дина тогда еще не замужем, и Мишу с Гитой. Мы почему-то думали, что Артур с Диной будут против, скажут, там, это старческий круиз, зачем, что мы там будем делать. Дети согласились мгновенно. Если родители платят за круиз, мы, конечно, поедем. Да? А Миша сказал, что он не поедет. Вот не поедет, все, без объяснения причин. Его пыталась уговорить Дина, пыталась уговорить Ира, пытался уговорить Артур. Ни в какую. Он даже не хотел с ними говорить. Я сказал: ну, давайте я попробую. Они так на меня посмотрели: слушай, ну если мы втроем не смогли этого сделать, ну что ты Я говорю: тем не менее. Ну, я выбрал такой удачный момент. Мы ехали в машине 20 минут вдвоем. Он не мог уйти от этого разговора в другую комнату. Он меня слушал 20 минут, не перебивая. Я ему сказал: все, нам ответ твой нужен через 3 дня. И через 3 дня мы сидим в ресторане, и Дина его спрашивает: дед, ну что ж ты вот такое замечательное мероприятие, значит, мы задумали, а ты его ломаешь? Он говорит: почему ломаю? Мы едем. И Дина в простоте своей спросила: дед, а почему ты передумал? Он сказал: аргументы, которые привел мне твой папа, были совершенно неубиенными. Мне нечего было возразить. Вы знаете, вот услышать, что я переубедил Марголина, привел аргументы, которые изменили его мнение, это очень дорогого стоит. И вот этого я тоже о нем никогда не забуду. Вот эти две вещи я хотел с вами поделиться. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Our concluding prayer, I do thank our speakers. The concluding prayer here in the chapel is called El Malei Rachamim, God the Compassionate One. Even in times of sadness, we turn to God for strength. I ask everyone who is comfortable to kindly stand. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bambaromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'malot Kedoshim U'Toharim, Kezohar Rakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Mikhail ben Moshe v'Rachel, Shalach L'olamo, Began Eden Tehei Menuchato, Ana, Ba'ar Rachamim, Hastirehu B'seter Knapecha L'olamim, Utzror B'tzror Chayim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'yanuach B'Shalom, Amishkavo V'Namar, Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Mikhail, the son of Moshe and Rachel, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he rest in the tranquility of shalom, of peace. And let us say, Amen. Kindly be seated. The interment will take place at the Crescent Memorial Park in Pennsauken. Adonai miyagur bo'helecha, miyishkon dohar koshecha, v'lev tamim v'poel tzedek, v'dover emet levavo, v'regal ad shlomo, v'asal re'ehu ra'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al kruvo, nivzer einav nim'at, v'et yireh Adonai yichabed, nishpal harav lo yavir, kaskol lo natan nesher, ושולחן על נתיבו לכך, ולשאלה, ולבנות לעולם. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our services here today at the chapel. If you are going with us to the cemetery, we'll ask